out because when we came in, we're like, first of all, we weren't getting any sleep. The baby was up every hour on the hour. We like couldn't have visitors because we were just so exhausted. We were sleeping anytime the baby was sleeping. Everyone was just saying, "Oh, sleep when the baby sleeps." Well, it's only no matter how you slice it, the baby only sleeps, an hour at a time. He's up an hour, sleeps an hour, up an hour, sleeps an hour. So we were having such a hard time with it, and literally I was drained. Like actually, one of the readings that I just posted on my TikTok, everybody like noticed it. They're like, "What the hell happened to you? You're so low energy. Like what?" And I was like, "Oh, that was filmed back when." Royce was first born. But I realized that, the more that you can lean on people and resources, the more that you make it through it. For example, we learned something called sleep training. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. You heard
No,
of sleep training?
no.
So it's kind of controversial. They say that you can't sleep train a child. Believe me, you can, because we went from waking up every half hour, every hour on the hour, all day long, right? For this kid not sleeping to all of a sudden him sleeping 2 hours, 3 hours to now he sleeps 9 to 9 every single night.
What is it? Just like the baby's crying, you're like, let's just let them stay.
No, you would
Oh,
think that's what it is. Like a lot of people, and that's why it's kind of controversial. Like a lot of people think it's the cry it out method, but really, what sleep training is, I'll just give you the brunt of it. It's all about getting the baby. First of all, there's two things that we didn't do because we had no idea. One, making sure that the baby sleeps as much as possible during the day. Sounds counterintuitive, but it works. And two, making sure that the baby gets as much calories as possible during the day so they're not working up. So it's constant. During the day, you do all your work. It's feed, sleep, feed, sleep, feed, sleep. That's all you do. He wakes up, you change the diaper, you feed him as much as possible, you put him to bed for a half hour. Then he wakes up, you feed him again as much as possible, you put him to bed for a half hour. You do this all day long, and then he builds up enough calories. So basically, during the night, he just sleeps like a baby. No pun intended.
wow. Wow, interesting. Well, we also see in your new show that there's the first, I think it's the first reading you do. We see this like couple, this like husband and wife, and I think like their son came through and they were like blaming themselves. And then when it was over, you were like, okay, time for dinner. Like, is that how it is? Like, I mean, this is your
Yes.
job. Like, is it really like you can tune it off?
No, you don't tune it off. But the thing is that you have to go on with life, right? It's like we live in a fast-paced society. It's like once I'm done, I don't get to go and just de-stress or woosah. Real life kicks back in. So in other words, like just like when somebody comes home from a 9 to 5 job and they're expected to change the diapers and put food on the table or do whatever the hell they got to do, they got chores waiting for them. Same thing for me as a medium. It's the minute that I'm done with these readings, yep, it's back to normal life.
And this particular couple, like they had so many feelings of like guilt and blaming themselves. Like, is that a common theme that you see like in your readings? Like, is there death associated with, like, is there guilt associated with most death? And like when people come to you, like, is that what they're looking for? Just kind of like relief from like blaming themselves? Because that seemed to be a common theme.
I think the key word is relief, right? That relief from something. Everybody handles grief differently. We all go through it. Even me as a medium, I go through grief after a death. But the thing is that people have grief for different reasons, and people are looking for relief for different reasons. Some people are not able to say goodbye to their loved one, and that's what's causing them pain. Sometimes people pass unexpectedly. You don't know how a person passes. That's causing them pain. So I think what really people are coming to me for are answers, right? They want to know that their loved ones are there. They want to know that they can communicate with their loved ones on their own. They want to know that heaven is real and the afterlife is real and that their loved ones are in a good place. And at the same time, they want to make sure that what they're feeling internally is also real because we all have a connection to heaven. We all sense and feel our loved ones. And some people just need that extra validation because how many times do I do readings where somebody sees a sign from their loved one, but second guesses it or says, that can't possibly be them. That can't possibly be my brother. That can't possibly be my sister. And that's the saddest thing, and I think that's why people come to me is just to reaffirm their belief system.
That makes a lot of sense. What about like if you're reading someone, have you ever had a situation where someone like comes through and has like negative news or just
Mm.
bad news or just like, I'm sorry, I have to tell you this?
Oh, absolutely. And that's really tough for me to do because I never want to give bad news to a person. And when I say bad news, it's really not bad news. It's just news that you weren't expecting or news that you weren't anticipating, right? So the toughest thing is that there's many times when I'll do a reading and you'll see some of them where if you go back, I'll say to the person, I really don't want to tell you this, or I really don't want to say this. And, I have a policy, and that is that I have to tell you everything. It's not up to me whether I want to or not. And sometimes it's difficult to hear. So, for example, there was this one woman that I was reading for, and her father came through, and her father was telling me that he had no idea that she was his daughter. And I had to basically tell this woman that her dad, had no idea that she even existed because, her mom had lied and said that during this reading, her mom had lied and said that it was not his kid. So he had no idea. And for years, she believes that, her dad had basically walked out of her life and disowned her when really the father just had no idea who she was. And that was really a tough reading to do. But there's also readings where people come in and they're expecting to hear one thing and they hear something else. For example, there was a woman that came to me and she was going through a divorce. And it was a really tough situation where unfortunately her husband was not truthful to her. He was with another woman. They had been together throughout their marriage and so on and so forth. And she came to me and her mom had passed away and she wanted advice from her mom. She needed to hear anything from her mother that she could do to save her marriage. And unfortunately, there was nothing that she could do to save her marriage. This is where free will came in. Her husband had already made his choice. He was leaving her. He was with another woman, and there was nothing that she could do. And the mother's advice to her was sign the divorce papers, stop stalling, and you have to move on from this. He doesn't love you. He's not going to love you. And that was a really tough message because this woman was desperate to hear one thing that she could do. All she wanted was her mom to say something that could make her husband fall back in love with her, that could save this marriage. And unfortunately, there was no such thing.
Although that's got to be helpful, right? It's kind of like maybe the push you needed.
You think so, right? We think that on the outside, but when you're going through that, this woman was very upset. I mean, she was mad, and I got to be honest with you. Luckily, I can tell you that the story had a happy ending because this was a reading that happened quite some time ago. But I'll tell you that in the meantime, in the beginning when I was first giving her this message, she didn't want to hear it. She was so upset with me. She kept telling me this is not what I need to hear. Ask my mother again. She asked me the question 5 different ways. Well, ask my mom, what if I say this to him? What if I do this for him? What if I don't send the papers? What if I do, she wanted anything that she could to save this marriage because, this was somebody that she thought that she truly, she truly did love him, but she thought that it was her soulmate. And what her mom was saying is that it wasn't.
Wow. What about does it happen where someone comes to you, like they lost a child, they lost a mother, and they really want one person to come through, and yet, their third uncle or their best friend's father, is it just someone they really don't necessarily care about coming through?